I bet you've heard this advice before. Abs are made in the kitchen.
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 I used to think and say that too. But if you're a woman over 40, that advice might be one of the reasons why you're struggling with cortisol belly fat. When I hit 40, I hadn't changed the way that I was eating, but my body suddenly changed. Like where I would store fat was definitely in my belly. I just felt thicker. I didn't recognize my body. And when you're doing your workouts and you're taking your supplements and you're trying to stay in a calorie deficit and nothing is working, like the belly fat is still there, it is just so discouraging. And obviously nutrition has a lot to do with it, but it's more than that. I remember shopping for our very first trip together, like as empty nesters alone, but only shopping for clothes that would cover my midsection. Not things I thought were cute, things I thought would camouflage what was going on with my body. And I was doing all the very same things you're probably doing. You finally get to a place where you realize, okay, another workout, another ab routine is not gonna fix this. And it's not about being more disciplined. My little ADHD reminders. And it's not your imagination. This fat seems different because it is different. And it doesn't just sit under the skin, it wraps around your internal organs. This is visceral fat. For women, as estrogen declines, the body dumps visceral fat into your midsection, increasing cortisol and insulin sensitivity. And the harder you work to starve it off, the more stubborn it becomes. Once I understood my biology, what's really going on and the cause of cortisol belly, then I understood the solution. Today I'm going to break it down for you, the scientifically proven smartest way for women over 40 to eat, train, and supplement. By the way, my name is Chalene Johnson. Welcome to The Chalene Show. I am not the cook in my family. It's my husband. He made all of this. I'm just pretending because I want to look like I cook. Daddy does all the cooking. First and foremost, this is not the same fat. It's not the same fat that we were dealing with in our 30s. For some of us, even in our early 40s. It feels different. For some of you, you maybe even have noticed it's like harder. And that's because what we're dealing with now is called visceral fat. You've probably heard the terms cortisol or cortisol belly thrown around. You know that this has something to do with stress, and you may even suspect that your hormones are playing a major role. But here's the part that probably nobody's telling you, and it stopped me cold in my tracks when I figured this out. The most common piece of advice that women in midlife tend to follow, that advice, most of it is based on science that works wonderfully for men, but for many of us, it backfires. It actually makes things worse. And then that plays on your psyche, and you just can feel so incredibly discouraged and wonder if maybe this is just part of aging and I have to deal with this thick midsection. I'm gonna tell you exactly what that advice is so you know what to avoid in just a few minutes. But first, I need to help you understand what is going on from a biological standpoint, because once I understood this, everything made sense. And more importantly, I understood how to solve the problem for myself, a problem that frankly I've been dealing with for almost 10 years, which lines up perfectly with perimenopause and the beginning of menopause for me. And once you truly understand like what's going on in your body, it's all gonna click and it's gonna make it so much easier. I know you want a simplified plan and we're gonna get to that. But first, this is the piece that's gonna make it stick. Let's start with the cortisol belly, because that's a concept that gets so watered down in social media that we tend to so oversimplify it, it's not helping us. You've probably been led to believe that cortisol belly just simply means you're stressed, and stressed turns to fat. But it's just not that simple for women who are perimenopausal and menopausal. For women, once we hit perimenopause, which is that time frame 7 to 10 years before menopause, our estrogen and other hormones start to decline. But what you may not realize is as estrogen is in decline, cortisol increases because estrogen formally tells the body where to store fat. It's like a traffic director. And when estrogen packs its bags and decides to leave the building, then there's no one there directing traffic. So cortisol steps in and says, hey, I'll direct traffic. Let me just dump a bunch of body fat right here in the midsection of your body. And it doesn't just dump subcutaneous fat, which is, that fat that you feel that's like soft and gushy around your midsection. You remember, you know what I'm talking about. There's a difference. Visceral fat wraps itself around your liver, around your pancreas. So even if you were someone who wanted to get plastic surgery and have all that sucked out, like there's no way to suck that fat out from around your organs. And that's why so many women, I'm sure you've experienced this, you get to a certain age and you're like, this is different. Like I just feel thick through the middle. Your weight on the scale might not have even changed that much. I know that was true for me. I was just a few pounds heavier, but nothing fit. And I was so uncomfortable with the way my midsection looked. And by the way, estrogen takes a nosedive during perimenopause. It can drop as much as 90%. That's huge. Not only does it tell your body where to store body fat, it tells your body how to regulate. It tells your body how to do so many things that relate to your metabolism. And visceral fat is very different biologically. Visceral fat has 4 times more cortisol receptors than subcutaneous fat. And I'm going to simplify these terms. It makes it replicate, duplicate. It's literally wired to sense any kind of stress, pick up on it, and absorb it. Before we go much further, can I ask a favor? I am very curious about you. Do you have ADHD? Like, not that you've necessarily been diagnosed with it, but do you have ADHD-like tendencies? And I'm asking because I've noticed based on quite a few of the comments under a lot of my videos, I tend to attract people who are either have a difficult time focusing, easily distracted, or maybe even formally diagnosed as having ADHD or some other form of neurodivergence. I'm just curious, that's all. And if you're not comfortable telling me that, you don't have to, that's fine. And while I have you, if I could take a moment to ask you to double check and make sure you're subscribed. Apparently YouTube's been, I don't know, glitchy and people have been unsubscribed who didn't. And if you've never subscribed, this would be the perfect opportunity, and let me know that you did today because I would like to say thank you personally. All right, let's get back to it. Every bit of cortisol that your body releases, and normally because estrogen was on board, you could regulate that. Well, now because estrogen's gone and any bit of cortisol, whether it's from a bad night of sleep or an argument, stress from work, stress from a difficult workout, stress just because of life, all of that goes straight to visceral fat. And this part is wild. Inside your visceral fat cells, there is this specific enzyme that basically takes inactive stress hormones, like they're out there doing nothing, and it kind of collects them up while they're floating around harmlessly, and it reactivates them into your bloodstream and turns them into a very potent active cortisol inside the fat cell itself. Okay, are you picturing this for a moment? That means that visceral belly fat actually starts manufacturing more visceral belly fat. It's a nightmare. It literally becomes its own stress hormone. It's stressful to try to lose it, and even being stressed about losing that belly fat can cause more belly fat. That makes so much sense to me. I remember thinking to myself, if I just stop worrying about this, I bet it's going to get better. And frankly, that's one of the pieces of advice I'm going to give to you. Relaxing over all of it. Once I understood this and worrying less about my body fat, ironically helped me to lose belly fat, visceral belly fat. Now I want you to sit with that for a moment because this changes everything. It's why most of the advice that we're following doesn't work for us. It backfires. It's like a cortisol loop. But now let's talk about the belly fat trap. You see, for most midlife women like myself, we were inundated with this message that you need to eat less. We would restrict and eat fewer and fewer calories based on that same messaging. Like, that means stay out of the kitchen if you want abs, right? But the problem is that science works beautifully for men. It works beautifully for someone who's in their 30s and has all of their hormones on board. But once estrogen is left and once your other hormones are in decline and cortisol is on the increase and it's so sensitive to any kind of stress, then if you're in too much of a deficit, that's stressful. And yes, you may lose weight. So there's this other kind of misnomer out there that if you're in too deep of a deficit, that your body's going to hold on to body fat. That's not necessarily true. That needs context as well. Here's what you need to understand. If you are dieting, whether it's with the use of a GLP-1 or just restricting, if you're just reducing the number of calories you're consuming so that you are in a deficit in order to lose weight, in order to lose body fat, that's stressful. If you go too low, it's highly stressful. So now you might still be losing weight, but you're spiking your cortisol. And you're also likely slowing your metabolism. So now think about this. Scale might be going down. You might be able to feel like you're losing some body fat, right? But you're fighting against your hunger hormones. And yes, that's of course easier if you're taking a GLP-1, but eventually if you stop taking the GLP-1 or if you just go back to your normal eating regimen and you haven't done the things you need to, which you can do without pharmacological intervention, it is possible to change your hunger hormones, to improve them and to improve your habits and to improve your body composition so you have more muscle, so you have a higher metabolism. But what happens is women in midlife we double down on the idea of restricting. We eat fewer and fewer calories. Our bodies become stressed. We lose the weight. And then eventually we go back to our maybe normal way of eating. Metabolism is slower. Cortisol is even higher. And that's when we get that surge of even more visceral fat. And that is why a phrase like abs are made in the kitchen can really become a belly fat trap if you're a midlife woman who's just restricting. When we cut calories severely, whether it's from a GLP-1 or just you being disciplined, it triggers a response in our brain in the hypothalamus. It's a way that keeps us alive. And it spikes cortisol because your brain doesn't know that you're dieting. Your brain doesn't know that you're doing a GLP-1. Your brain just is like, oh my gosh, we are in famine and our job is to keep her alive. So let's
slow down. Let's slow down her metabolism.
And let's spike up cortisol. It is literally a survival mechanism. And your body can't tell the difference whether you're dieting, restricting, or living through a famine. So the harder you try to follow that advice, the more it can backfire in terms of visceral fat. So what actually works? Okay. And I know you want this to be super duper simple, and I'm going to make it as simple for you as possible. You do need to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose fat anywhere. The key is going into a deficit that is not too steep, number one. And number two is changing your habits, changing the way that you eat and changing the timing of your protein. And the first tool that I want to share with you that changed the game for me was preloading my protein. Now, I've always thought about, look, I've got to eat protein in every single meal. I've done that for 30 years. Nonetheless, there was a 10-year period where I just struggled with visceral fat. I was so uncomfortable with my midsection. I thought I'm never, ever going to wear a bikini ever again. I'm always going to make sure I'm covered up, even though I was eating my protein. But here's what I was doing. I was sitting down for a meal, making sure I had protein on my plate, but eating everything that was on my plate. Once I shifted to starting with my protein, and the way that I did this, I want to share this tip with you, is by literally making sure that I was having 25 grams of protein, minimum 25 to 30 grams of protein, before I allowed myself to eat anything else. Now, sometimes that just might have meant that we're going out to dinner, and I would sit down and have a cup of cottage cheese before we left. Or maybe I would even have a protein shake so that I was guaranteed that I was starting my meal with 25 to 30 grams of protein. What this did was help me to feel more satiated, number one. Number two, it made certain that I was always getting in enough protein without the stress of counting macros. Personal opinion, if you love counting your macros, great. If you've never counted your macros and have no idea how much protein or carbohydrates or even calories you're consuming, you should probably consider doing that. You really do need to know your numbers in order to improve them. For myself personally, and for some of you I know who are listening, I spent so many years of doing that it was stressful, that mealtime became a mathematical equation that I didn't enjoy. And I hated the way it made me feel. And I always felt like I was missing the mark. And I just was like, I'm never going to do it again. And when I switched to just going, let me just make sure I'm getting about, and I'm not hardcore about this, about 25 to 30 calories of protein before I eat anything else. And I don't care. I'm not counting anything else. I don't count my carbohydrates. I don't count my calories unless something's going on and I feel like I've gained some weight. But once I switched to that, in a matter of about 3 months, I lost 10 pounds without counting macros. And most importantly, I lost the visceral belly fat. It literally came off my midsection. Now, I don't have many before photos because whenever I took a disgusting, horrible photo, it didn't exist. I just deleted it. I mean, I think I have like 2, maybe 3 photos that at the time I thought were pretty flattering. So these are the flattering photos from that period of time. These are not even the like terribly embarrassing ones because I deleted them all. Can you relate? The second tool that I want to share with you is something I call 111456. Can you remember that? It's almost like a phone number. 111456. So easy. There's 3 ones and then a 456. This is how I remembered proteins, okay? So think of it this way. These are all things that relate to about 25, 30 grams of protein, approximately. Listen, you don't need to get out a calculator or weigh things and go like, oh, but this is actually 28 grams, Shalene, whatever. Like, we're not that picky. We're just eyeballing it. But basically, 1 heaping scoop of protein is about 25 to 30 grams of protein. 1 cup of cottage cheese is about 25 to 30 grams of protein. 1 cup of egg whites is about 25, 30 grams of protein. Okay, so that's your 111. So there's just about anything that I think of as like white protein. Typically, so I'm thinking about white protein powder, white cottage cheese, white Greek yogurt, high protein Greek yogurt. You know what I mean? So just think 111. Those are all 25 to 30 grams of protein. The 4 stands for 4 ounces of chicken. 4 ounces of chicken is about the size of a small fist. That's another 25, 30 grams of protein. 5 stands for about 5 ounces of steak. That's another 25, 30 grams of protein. And 6 stands for 6 ounces of fish, okay? So the 4 is for the chicken, the 5 is for the steak, and the 6 is for the fish. And there's a million other ways to get your proteins in, but those are your safe, non-processed, high protein that's going to deliver you satiety. It's going to make you feel full. It's going to decrease your hunger hormones, and it's going to make it so much easier for you to stay in a calorie deficit, yet at the same time, hit your protein macros without having to calculate. Just make sure you have at least 25 to 30 grams of protein at every meal and at least 1 snack. Generally speaking, you want to aim for about 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. We can get real fancy about this and we can talk about all the mathematical equations, and I've seen lots of videos on that, and I don't know about you, but I can't remember them. And I'm a health professional. And I don't want to sit there doing math. It's like, okay, how much do I want to weigh? And that's about how many grams of protein I need to get per day. That means you take your weight, and if you need to get more than 25 or 30 grams per meal, let's say you're only eating 3 times a day, well, then you're going to have to get more than 25 or 30. For me, I have about 4 small meals a day, and I make sure that each one of them has between 25 to 30 grams of protein, and then I'll usually have some type of a yummy protein dessert at night. If you would like for me to share with you some of my favorite recipes, comment below, and I can do a whole video sharing with you my favorite recipes, my favorite go-tos when it comes to getting in my protein every day. Getting rid of that cortisol belly, reducing visceral fat isn't just about nutrition. It's not just about preloading our protein. It's not just about making sure that we're in a deficit, but not so low of a deficit. It's about a lot of things. It's about our hormones too. Because if you don't learn to control your hunger hormones, well, then when you're out of that deficit, when you're off of your GLP-1, the hunger hormones come back raging and you haven't done anything to make those permanent changes. Another way that we do that is by monitoring our hormones. Even the movement that you do, what type of exercise, impacts your hormones. And all of us are different. So the advice I'm going to give you has worked for me, and it's worked for tens of thousands of women that I've coached, but everybody's different. And that's why it's really important that you should know your numbers before you start. So I'm going to tell you that HIIT training is a stressor. That's high intensity interval training. Nonetheless, I do interval training and I do it twice a week. But for a period of time when I was trying to get rid of my visceral fat, I laid off the HIIT training completely. I did none. I went from doing HIIT training 5 days a week to 0. I just did things to help me get my nervous system back. Things that were calm, things that weren't stressful, things that would tell my body it's okay. We're not racing. We're not trying to win. We're not about to die. We're not being chased by a lion. I just need to calm my nervous system. And that was what was right for me. I don't know if that's right for you. Eventually, though, your body adapts. And I was just doing zone 2 cardio. So I shifted to just recently including interval walking twice a week, also known as Japanese walking. I've done a whole video about Japanese walking. You can check it out on YouTube. But for most women, you want to do activities that keep your cortisol levels low and increase the one thing that you need to boost your metabolism. And I know you know the answer. That's muscle. And the way that we build muscle is by lifting with a program that follows progressive overload, meaning you're making the workout a little bit harder each time. Your body's less likely to adapt. The more muscle you have, it is your metabolic Spanx, as my friend JJ Virgin calls it. And it really does improve not just the rate at which you're burning calories at rest, it also improves the way that you move through life, your longevity, the way that you look, the way that all of your hormones interact together, and it's a way to keep cortisol at bay. And you might be asking, wait, so are you saying no more cardio? No, absolutely not. You need cardio. Your body was meant to move every single day. So here's my recommendation, and this is what worked for me to get rid of the visceral fat. It was moving more. I thought because I was killing myself in the gym for about an hour every day that I was, quote, an active person. But the rest of the day, I was like sitting on my computer, looking at my phone, working, active, but not physically active. So I changed that. I stopped sitting. I made sure I bought a walking pad, very inexpensive, so that I wasn't working out, but I was moving. Instead of like scrolling on my phone, sitting in a chair, because a lot of my work is done on my phone. The same is probably true for you, or you're responding to text messages, emails, and we tend to do that sitting and we don't need to. You can do that on a walking treadmill, a walking pad. You can do that even walking outside. You can do that pacing around your home. Just doing that and not worrying about your step count per se, but focusing on not sitting and spending less time inactive will increase your NEAT calories. Did you know of the total calories you burn each day, even if you're exercising like a maniac, only 5% of that comes from your exercise. More than 10% comes from the energy that your body burns just processing your food, especially if it's real food. When we're eating fast, convenient foods that digest very, very quickly, those don't burn as many calories as, say, for example, a breast of chicken or a steak or a sweet potato. Sweet potato? Sweet potato. Potato. Sweet potato. But 15% comes from NEAT calories. And NEAT calories are known as non-exercise activity thermogenics. In other words, it's just, if you're moving around, if you're tapping your toes, if you're pacing, if you're just moving, it's not even exercise, you're going to burn more calories. And up to 70% comes from your basal metabolic rate. And you can elevate your basal metabolic rate by making sure that your body has more muscle. And that for me made all the difference. Increasing the amount of muscle that I had, front loading my protein, moving more. The last strategy I want to share with you relates to supplementation. Having the right supplements on board when you are a woman who's over 40, perimenopausal, into menopause and beyond is so essential. And that's coming from someone who used to be anti-supplements. Like I worked for a company that sold supplements and all of the trainers signed contracts where they were required to promote supplements and paid nicely to do so. And I refused to do so because I just didn't think that we needed supplements. It seemed like a money grab to me. Little did I realize that as your hormones are in decline, your body stops absorbing nutrients the way that it once did. It stops producing things that it once did. And so as I was entering into perimenopause, my body was really struggling, and I had to do some research to figure out which supplements I needed to help my body regulate insulin. I wanted to know how to naturally produce GLP-1, which is something we do naturally produce in our bodies. And there are ways to increase this without doing, for example, an Ozempic or, fill in the blank. So when I did my research, 3 things I needed were berberine, chromium, and fiber. So of course I increased my fiber in my diet, and then I found a supplement that had both berberine and chromium in it. They are also a show sponsor because I asked them to be, because hello, this is something that could really help those of you who are trying to get rid of visceral fat. And it's called Berberine Breakthrough. I'll put a QR code here up on the screen. I've also arranged for you to get a nice little discount. What I love about Bioptimizer, the company that makes this product, is they offer a 365-day money-back guarantee. And that meant a lot to me, especially because I was such a skeptic of supplements. So this is an important supplement. Now, if you don't want to use Bioptimizer, that's up to you. But please make sure that you're doing your research, because not all supplement companies are made the same. Many of them aren't doing third-party lab testing. Many of them don't have the ingredients in them that they say they do. That's why I always recommend products from Bioptimizer, because I know they do third-party testing. And while on that subject and this company, because maybe you're already on that website, let's talk about how important your sleep supplements are. Don't take it just from me. I've had countless experts who I've had the opportunity to interview on the show, and I've asked each and every one of them, what are the most important things that most women are deficient in that's causing them to hold on to visceral belly fat? One of them is magnesium, specifically magnesium that you should be taking before bed. I take Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizer, again, because it's got 7 or 8 different types of magnesium in one capsule. So you don't have to take like 4 different bottles, magnesium in the morning and magnesium at night. Like, no, this has all of them. And they're specially formulated so they won't upset your stomach. I love the powder. They have a powdered form of this and a capsule form. We'll put it up on the screen someplace. You'll see a QR code. You can check them out. But if you're not going to be using Bioptimizer, that's totally up to you. I just want to make it simple for you and share with you what has worked for me. But it is important that you consider doing berberine to help with cortisol, to help your body process sugars, to help your body reduce that stress. It does also tend to decrease cravings, decrease hunger hormones, but it doesn't eliminate your appetite. And I think that's important, because if you're not eating enough calories, you're going to lose muscle, and that's not good. It's also essential that you're getting your vitamin D plus your omega-3s. All of these things are important because our bodies are so sensitive at this stage, at this age. We can't take our nutrition or our supplementation for granted. We want to be eating whole foods. We want to front load our protein. We want to make sure that we're doing movement that calms our energy system, getting into a deficit, but not so deep into a deficit that it stresses us out. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's truly about reducing stress and remembering, like, I'm level 57. What level are you? I don't call it age, I call it level. I'm level 57, and it's kind of nice just reminding myself I don't really have to give an F what anybody else thinks. I don't have to worry. Like, you just get to this age where you have to regularly remind yourself, who cares what they think? Who cares? And that will help you reduce your stress. Sure, you can meditate, you can learn to do a lot of things that'll make you calmer and less stressed, and go for it. But for me, it's just like remembering, oh yeah, I just don't have to worry that much. I don't have to worry the way I once did in my 30s and 40s. Are you with me? Hey, thanks for being here. I love you. I mean it. I hope you've subscribed, and I'll talk to you soon.